Well, it's like the old cliche about the oxygen masks on the plane, right? You have to help yourself
Yes.
before you can help somebody else. And if you're not a strong swimmer or you don't have any type of training in rescue it's very easy for a flailing person or a drowning person to pull you down,
Oh,
right?
yes.
So what's interesting to me, you've got a list of places where children often drown. So how does that change when you start looking at those over 15 years old? You're talking about that higher risk group of the men. Um, where do they typically run into trouble?
Well, you see a lot happening more in open water settings. As we get older, we tend to go to different environments than we may have when we were younger, and oftentimes people don't understand the nature of those environments, and that's actually brings me to why um, we developed about 2.5 years ago a program called Know Before You Go, because what we were seeing in, again, this is New York City, but as I spoke to colleagues up and down various coasts, discovered that it was similar there too. We've had an increase of our water levels over the past 12 years due to the climate change that's happening. Our water levels are rising an inch and a half a year. And so that's problematic for many reasons. Not only that, but our storms are becoming more intense, not less. And as we saw this year, much more frequent. This year, we had to go into a second alphabet. We had so many tropical storms. I think we set the record at 30 some odd. Help me out, Roy, if you know the exact number. So that, and in combination with our waterfronts being developed as never before in my lifetime, it creates a problem in that we are opening up access to many types of natural water that was not so accessible before. And we have millions of people who, in addition to not having the swimming skills, don't understand the different conditions those waters represent. So, for example, a swimming pool is quite different in their conditions to a lake or a pond, which is quite different in their conditions to a river, which is quite different in their conditions to an ocean, etc. And without understanding the environment and the different conditions of those bodies of water, you have a problem right off the bat. And so our programming really focused on that environmental and science-based understanding of the nature and conditions of the different bodies of water that we meet in our lives, to help people, whether you swam or you didn't swim, understand those dangers and therefore be able to make good decisions that would help them stay safe in, around, and on top of water.
So I want to run through just for a minute then. You talked about the different types of bodies of water, right? Pools, lakes, ponds, rivers, seas, or oceans. Let's go through each one of those and give me a couple of the greatest risks that you see in each of those environments.
Sure. So a swimming pool that many of us know is probably the most stable, right? It's enclosed, it's in four walls. Many of our competitive swimmers, that's the avenue that they grow up in, is a swimming pool. And so even for them, it's important for our swim team members to know that going out into open water settings is very different. Again, from a condition point of view, doesn't mean they can't swim in them, but they're going to find those challenges to be quite different. And so you have to learn how to mitigate those challenges. stepping back for a moment. So you have your swimming pool, which is your most stable environment. Let's go to a pond, for example. A pond is generally a smaller body of water. It can be calmer, doesn't look to be a problem. But, the first thing that you understand is as you're looking at the pond is you probably can't see the bottom of it. So you don't know, A, how deep it is. You don't know what's under there. Often in ponds, you have, different types of bottoms. You have a lot of grass or weeds growing in ponds, and those can appear to trap you. And if you panic, it can indeed trap you. It's really you trapping yourself because you're getting more into the weeds instead of being calm and relaxing and moving away from the weeds. The panic is the problem across equal opportunity problem across all bodies of water. But ponds, can be difficult from that point of view. When you get to a lake, which is much bigger than a pond, you can have, in addition to the creatures in the lake and the pond and the weeds, etc. Depending upon the size of the lake, you can also have rip current in lakes, large lakes. Okay, and so to understand how to manage through rip current is very important. And even wind conditions across lakes can bring problems in terms of the chop of the waves, etc. If you move to rivers, again, depending upon the size of the river, if it's a big river like we have with the Hudson or the East River in New York City, the current is so strong in those rivers. If you can't swim, it's just going to sweep you out. I mean, it's even as swimmers, it's very difficult to swim against the current in particular. You exhaust yourself. So the rivers, again, you can't see the bottom. Around large cities, we tend to have unpleasant things at the bottom of our rivers, like old rusted automobiles, cement blocks, construction detritus, things that are not welcoming to any swimmer to swim safely. And if you just go, running off a pier, jumping or diving in, you don't know what you're going to hit when you hit that water. And you could injure yourself to the point of having a broken neck, even dying.
So we hear about that type of incident, frequently if people are diving in a shallow end of a pool or diving off of let's say a cliff into a shallow lake or pond or something that they're not aware of. Do you see a lot of that in other environments, like diving off of a pier into water that they don't know as well?
Yes. You have to know how deep. Whenever you're always going feet first is the way to go in dark water, natural water, where you can't see the bottom. Even there are watering holes, just quarries, for example, in many places where, for generations, people have rigged up ropes and you jump on the rope and you swing out and you let go. You need to know what you're getting into. And that's why we call our program Know Before You Go, because it's often what we don't know that puts us at risk. And the reality is, as human beings, we all know that there are risky situations. There are dangers. People suffer tragedies. Other people suffer tragedies until something happens to us directly, where we, have a problem ourselves. So that's part of the nature of who we are, is we're always pushing the envelopes, males more than females, but even females. I was a bit of a tomboy. I pushed envelopes all the time. It's amazing I'm still here talking about it. But yeah.
So as you have identified all of these dangers, right? It sounds overwhelming for something that many people consider innocuous, right? We're around water all the time. We take kids to water parks. We have swimming lessons, baby pools, slip and slides in the backyards or wherever we're doing things. So as you take your program, what types of groups do you work with in terms of providing this training?
So initially, when we did the program about 2.5 years ago. It was a PowerPoint presentation, and literally I went to schools with this, about 17 different schools, and spoke to maybe 7,000 students in that time. And then whichever civic organizations would have me, or even some churches would invite me in. So any place there was a group of people that would gather, I'd be happy to go and share this information. And oftentimes we work, our swimming programs, or learn to swim programs, are in communities where typically there has not been that type of access to water. So, we are looking to help people understand the nature of water, to get them to make water safety and swimming skills a priority. Because truly, in terms of swimming skills, swimming is the only activity that is life-saving, right? It is the best exercise that you can do to keep yourself healthy, the best total body workout that one can do, best cardio, pulmonary, and as of course the age, skeletal friendly. It's the only exercise that literally we can do from womb to tomb. Womb to tomb. And I'm closer to the tomb side of that equation myself, and can really attest to how wonderful it is to be in the water. Again, from that skeletal point of view, I used to play semi-pro volleyball. I can't do that anymore, but I can swim when we're not in a pandemic and can't get into the pool. My body misses not swimming terribly. I can share that with you. So, really any place that I could go to help people understand water. And we're so attracted to water, Roy, right? What is it? 73% or 78% of our own bodies are made up of water. In our evolutionary history, we probably came from water. So there is this huge attraction. Even if we know we don't swim, to just go to water, to put our feet in the water, to walk along the shore, mentally and physically, it calms us down. There's some connection to water that is just so wonderful. So why not learn to be safe in, on, and around the water, and learn the skills to help you safely navigate the water and enjoy it for all of the wonderful benefits that it can provide to you.
Well, and we're fortunate in this country, right? There's not really a water shortage where people can't get access to water, as opposed to other parts of the world, right? It's much, I'm not saying in terms of swimming and recreationally that they can't get access, right? But we're around water pretty freely and easily in a lot of environments. And so I think people take it for granted in many ways. You do
kind of good news, bad news, right? It's a little bit good news, bad news, because yes, we have all sorts of, again, open water, natural water around us. But again, we can easily drown because current, something happens in a river situation where the water was very calm for a while, because you don't see what's going on upstream, right? So maybe there was some sort of a blockage which suddenly burst. And now this water that had been building up behind it comes naturally flowing through. And people are in the water, what they assume to be calm water, and it's no longer calm. Now what? Now we're in a problem. So New York City, for example, is supposed to be this premier global city. And yet from an access to water for us in terms of swimming pools, where to teach these skills, we are like a desert, an aquatics desert. We have so few pools, so many people. It would be virtually impossible to teach everyone, even if there was the political will and the financial ability to teach 8.5 million people how to swim. If every swim school provider were to come together on this mission, we still wouldn't be able to do it within our lifetimes. So
Yeah,
that's why this training was so particularly important, again, for swimmers or for non-swimmers, so we better understand the water and the fact that our world is becoming more watery year over year. And it's changing. The conditions are changing around us, almost in a way that we don't see. And it isn't until we have like a superstorm Sandy when we realize, for example, like, oh my gosh, what's just happened? We've never had this kind of an impact before in our city.
So as you provide this training to all of these different groups, help our listeners understand what the cost is for those groups to get this training and how you get the funding to support and underwrite the delivery of that service.
So initially, I did this just because I felt the need was so great. So it wasn't underwritten. It was me, volunteering an organization. I just went and I did it. But again, with the pandemic, the opportunity to think about how we could get this message out, this training out more broadly, was to embrace technology. So now, from that one PowerPoint presentation, we actually have 4 presentations, 2 that can be given, a family or an individual can purchase directly from our website, and 2 that would be addressing groups and or schools. And we have gotten the price down for the schools, which is really the richest programming. In the schools, for example, we run from pre-K through 12. We have 3 different programs. The pre-K through 2nd grade is a bit softer because naturally those students, can't generally read or write on their own, and they need to receive messaging in a way that they can understand it, which is a little bit different than for the older children. But for the grades 3 through 12, there's a pre and a post test. So we want to understand what the child's baseline of knowledge of the topic is. And then we move into the training itself, and there are slideshows per topic. So there's 4 modules, and in each module, there could be anywhere from 3 to 5 topics that we're exploring. And we have these activities to help the students look further. So they're either reading articles or looking at YouTube videos on these topics, and then little mini quizzes also to test their understanding per topic. The teacher has a teacher's guide that gives them even more resources for them to be able to take that deeper dive into a topic of interest and blow it up. So instead of teaching 3 modules in the course of a 45-minute session, the teacher could focus on one of those topics in that time period. So there's enough information to do that. And we also include age-appropriate STEM-based exercises. So this programming really, again, focuses on the environmental and science focus of water safety, not so much the swimming skills. Of course, we encourage you to get them, but that's not the focus. During the STEM exercises, we will tie the science behind swimming to the skill of swimming. So that's where we bring it in there. And then we do the post-test after the training. And so, of course, our goal is to see that there's more correct answers after the people have been trained than there have been before they were trained. And that's typically what we're finding. Right now, we are training 2,300 students in the New York City School Department of Education are going through that now. And, be able to report out on those findings next month in January. That should wrap up. And then we'll be doing phase 2 of our pilot and seeking to reach another 5,000 students. And we are interested in reaching those students all over the country. So if anyone listening is an educator that would like to understand more about our training, I'd be delighted to send them some information and hopefully get them on board with our pilot program, which will run through the end of this school year. And we'll be able to give the training at a reduced cost to the schools.